let's take a look at what's happening around the world on WION Speed News. North Korea says it will suspend nuclear and missile tests effective immediately. Kim Jong-un said that his country no longer needs to conduct ICBM missile tests because it has completed weaponizing nuclear arms. Trump welcomes Kim's move. The United States has branded China and Russia as forces of instability and grouped them with Iran and North Korea as countries whose rights abuses mount to global threat. The Kremlin said that the United States was deliberately making it difficult for Aeroflot crews to obtain U.S. visas and that it was concerned by the situation. The United States also imposed sanctions against Russian entities and individuals on April 6 to punish Moscow for its alleged meddling in the 2016 U.S. elections. The United States said it has full support from the international community following missile strikes in Syria that targeted weapons facilities. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis warned Syria that the United States stands ready to address anything in the future. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov condemned the aggressive U.S., British and French airstrikes on April 14, saying that they had complicated the Syrian peace process. Lavrov spoke after meeting with the United Nations Syria Special Envoy in Moscow. Russian Defense Minister said at a meeting in Moscow that United Nations Syria Envoy Stefan de Mistura that U.S.-led airstrikes in Syria had not contributed to the peace process in Syria. Shoigu said last weekend strikes on a government-organized media tour of Duma, journalists were taken to visit a building described as the abandoned Al-Toba prison, previously used by Jaish al-Islam. Foreign media were told that Al-Toba prison included men's, women's and military wings and was used by rebels to detain people charged with different crimes. Demanding an end to the gun violence and tougher restrictions on firearm sales, thousands of students again walked out of classes across the United States, aiming to put pressure on politicians ahead of November's midterm elections. Organizers said students from more than 2,600 schools and institutions planned to take part. One student was hurt in a shooting at a high school in Ocala, Florida on Friday. Police say the gunman was a student who opened fire on another classmate, prompting a massive police response, just as students across the country prepared to walk out of the schools to protest gun violence. The Democratic Party sued Russia President Donald Trump's campaign and WikiLeaks, charging that they conspired to disrupt the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. The party alleges in the federal lawsuit that top Trump campaign officials conspired with the Russian government to hurt Hillary Clinton and till the election to Trump by hacking Democratic Party computers. A federal judge signaled possible shortcomings in a request by Donald Trump's personal lawyer to delay adult film actress Stormy Daniels' lawsuit over her alleged affair with U.S. President, but stopped short of pulling it on hold. Israeli troops shot dead 4 Palestinians on the Gaza-Israel border. This brings the death toll to 35 in recent weeks among Palestinian protesters demanding the right to return to their former homeland. Israeli Defense Minister said that the country was ready to handle any threat as Israeli troops clashed with Gaza protesters along the border fence. British Prime Minister Theresa May said Britain's Prince Charles has been a proud supporter of the Commonwealth for more than 4 decades after he was approved as the successor to Queen Elizabeth as head of the organisation at a meeting of the group's heads of government. British Prime Minister Theresa May hosted the retreat session on Friday for the heads of Commonwealth nations attending 25th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London. After ending his engagements at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a bilateral meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. The two leaders exchanged views on a range of regional and global issues. The Union Cabinet will today consider a draft ordinance prescribing the death penalty for those convicted of raping children below 12 years. The government has informed the Supreme Court that they have decided to bring an ordinance to implement the changes in the protection of children from sexual offenders, also known as the POCSO Act. India's Kashmir Valley has received fresh snowfall, resulting in a dip in temperatures. Kashmir's district administration has issued an avalanche warning for hilly and avalanche-prone areas of the Indian state. Hundreds of people in India's northern hill town of Dharamshala gathered to mark the beginning of a 6-day-long yogurt festival on Friday. People celebrated the vibrant festival by eating yogurt and sweets, while regional traditional opera performers, singers and dancers came together and sang songs. Traditionally known as the Shoton, the festival is celebrated on a full moon day and marks the end of the months-long summer retreat. The G20 ministers at the IMF meeting said they're projecting strong growth in the coming year at close to 4%, with ministers raising concerns about possible threats to free trade. Almost a year after US President Donald Trump inaugurated NATO's new billion-dollar headquarters with fanfare at a special summit, alliance officials are now finally moving in, leaving their prefab 1960s base that leaked during rainstorms. Exercise Flintlock 2018 concluded in Niger, drawing to a close after focus this year on training African forces to synchronize intelligence across large, mainly undergoverned territories to stop the spread of extremists and stabilize a volatile region where 2 US soldiers lost their lives in an ambush late last year. An Air Force commander said the patrols by the warplanes of Chinese People's Liberation Army Air Force around Taiwan is aimed to increase the force's combat readiness. The PLA Air Force has recently conducted air patrols around Taiwan, dispatching multi-types of aircraft. A boat carrying 76 Rohingya Muslims landed in northwest Indonesia, the latest in what rights group expect will be a wave of dangerous sea crossings by members of the persecuted minority from Myanmar. The group, which included 8 children and 25 women, suffered from varying degrees of fatigue and dehydration. The Basque militant group ETA apologized for the harm caused to victims and their relatives during its half-century-long violent campaign to create an independent state in northern Spain and southwest France. The Spanish government welcomed the apology and said the announcement was confirmation of ETA's total defeat. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro traveled to Cuba to congratulate the new head of state and announced that he is bringing new cooperation proposals to his socialist ally. Cuba and Venezuela have maintained close political and economic ties forged since the late President Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999. South Africa's new President Cyril Ramaphosa flew into the northern city of Mahikeng to try and quell an outbreak of violent protests that had forced him to cut short a visit to the Commonwealth Summit. Air France launched a new consultation period with staff members to try to end a strike dispute over pay that has so far cost it €220 million, with the company's head saying his job was on the line. Protests in Nicaragua over changes to Social Security have led to the deaths of at least 3 people, including a police officer, heaping pressure on the leftist government of President Daniel Ortega. Nicaraguans have been protesting for 3 straight days against government changes to Social Security signed into law earlier this week that increase worker contributions and lower pensions. Police arrested more than 180 people as opposition supporters staged sit-ins and attempted to block traffic in Armenia's capital, the latest in days of protest at what they are branding a power grab by ex-President Sarkisian. An appearance by Maltese Prime Minister Joseph Muscat at a London gala dinner was met with protest on Friday. The roughly 24 protesters, mostly from the city's Maltese community, were demonstrating against the murder of Maltese journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia in October 2017. Some 50 Central American migrants who began a long journey from southern Mexico at the end of March arrived at the border with the United States despite threats by President Donald Trump to send the National Guard to stop them. A former state governor from Mexico was extradited from Italy to the United States, where he is accused of drug trafficking, money laundering, and other federal crimes in conjunction with a powerful Mexican drug cartel. The head of Chile's Catholic Church said that a Chilean bishop accused of covering up sexual abuse should resign little more than a week after Pope Francis said he had made mistakes in handling Chile's sexual abuse crisis. A CCTV camera captured the moment of a girl pushed into a friend into the road, falling dangerously close to a bus in Poland on April 12. The footage showed a motorist stopping close by shortly afterwards, examining the girl, who was unhurt in the incident. Residents of the tiny African kingdom of Swaziland weighed up their country's new official name after the king unexpectedly announced it would now be known as Eswatini. King Swati III, one of the world's few absolute monarchs, declared the name change at celebrations on Thursday, marking 50 years since independence from British colonial rule. Members of the United Nations Security Council in Sweden for an informal meeting visited a multidisciplinary research facility in Lund. The European spallation source, which when ready will be based on the world's most powerful pulsed neutron source, is currently being built in southern Sweden. A public viewing was held for former U.S. First Lady Barbara Bush at a Houston church from a wheelchair. Former President George H.W. Bush shook hands with the members of the public who had come to pay their respects to his wife. Hundreds of neo-Nazis were expected to gather on Adolf Hitler's birthday for a 2-day festival in a small eastern German town where anti-fascist groups have vowed counter-protest. A major police deployment aims to prevent violence during the festival that is expected to also attract Eastern European extremists. David Bowie has taken over a subway station in his adopted home of New York, with images of the rock legend plastered throughout and commemorative fare cards issued in his honor. Concert photos figure on the walls, and his giant black and white likeness appears at the track entrance of the subway station. Bollywood actor Ranbir Kapoor and actress Deepika Padukone turned showstoppers for designer Manish Malhotra at the 2018 Mijwan fashion show. While Deepika wore an embellished floral lehenga, Ranbir was seen in a black Bant Gala. This year marks the 9th edition of the fashion show organized by Shabana Azmi's non-governmental organization Mijwan Welfare Society.